Many of this week's readings mention the Antichrist. What does this mean for us? What should we be doing to keep an eye out? It's a good question. A lot of talk about the Antichrist. And, Protestant groups have kind of built a whole movement on the end times and the Antichrist. Unfortunately, it's not always biblical. But the Antichrist, we get this from the book of Revelation here in chapter 13, verse 16 and 18. It says, it talks about the number 666, and that's related to the Antichrist, the number 666. We'll get to that in just a moment. I think you'll find it fascinating. In 1 John 2:18, John says, "Children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come. Therefore, we know that it is the last hour." Now, if John, the disciple of the Lord, the youngest of the disciples, the one who wrote 1st, 2nd, 3rd John and the Gospel of John and Revelation, and he has this theme of the Antichrist. He says in 1 John 4:3, "And every spirit which does not confess Jesus is not of God. This is the spirit of Antichrist, of which you heard that it was coming, and now it is in the world already." Now, if he thinks that the end is near in the last hour, imagine our times we're living in today. A lot of people think it is last hour. 2 John 7, "For many deceivers have gone out into the world, men who will not acknowledge the coming of Jesus Christ in the flesh. Such a one is the deceiver and the Antichrist." All right, so John sees that things are winding down. There is a character who he calls Antichrist. There's a spirit of Antichrist. And then in the book of Revelation, there is an Antichrist. And John writes about that. And now the book of Revelation, chapter 13, mentions this Antichrist and the number of this beast. There's a large beast in the book of Revelation. There's a smaller beast. The large beast is typically attached to Nero of Rome. And Nero of Rome was from 54 to 68. Then the small beast is the leadership in Jerusalem. So I think it's safe to say that Nero at that time is the Antichrist, but there's a spirit of Antichrist and a double fulfillment, one to who John is writing to back then, but then also for us today and the future. So this is a way of interpreting Scripture that the early church fathers and the Middle Ages came up with what's called the quadriga, which is we have to ask ourselves, how does this text relate to Jesus? How does it relate to our conduct, the moral, and then the future? How does it relate to the future? So we're always thinking at different levels. So Nero in the first century, Antichrist, the beast, the big beast, who is in the sea, and the one on the land is the leaders in Jerusalem, who are in cahoots with the beast in the sea, the big one. So listen to this. He goes on and he's going to teach us something about the Antichrist in chapter 13 of Revelation. And yes, we should be keeping our eyes open. Yep. Revelation 13, 16 through 18. He says, "Also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark. That is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let him who has understanding reckon the number of the beast, for it is a human number. Its number is 666. So he is identifying the large beast, this Antichrist. When John teaches in the book of Revelation, he doesn't quote the Old Testament, but he refers or hints back to the Old Testament over 500 times. So if you want to know the book of Revelation, you got to know the Old Testament. And then things start filling in really, really quick. And that's, to be honest with you, that's one of the problems in biblical interpretation today on a popular Protestant side, is that there's really a lack of understanding of the narrative in the Old Testament and the way that John teaches with hints Very, very Hebraic way, actually, hinting back to the Old Testament. So he's hinting back to, for lack of a better word, chunks of history in the Old Testament, and he's bringing new meaning in the new, in the final times, the final days, the ending of the old and the beginning of the new, but also like a double meaning, the end of time as well. Well, it's interesting because he does this with the number of the beast, 666, and he says, well, okay, how are we going to calculate the number of the beast? And then he says, this calls for wisdom. Now that's a key right there. He's given you a hint. In the Old Testament, there was one king who had 666 talents of gold. He had 600 wives, 300 concubines. He had over 1,000 chariots. These were all three things that a king should not have: many chariots, many wives, much gold. Because these are alliance tokens, if you will, to make alliances with the Phoenicians or other Egypt or other countries. And a king of Israel should not have these alliances, right? So the one king that falls to this and has 666 talents of gold is none other than Solomon. Now, what was Solomon known for? Wisdom. And that's why John says, let's calculate the number of the beast. This will take wisdom. He's showing you what the beast is like. And Solomon, at the end of his reign, was a tyrant. He allowed for all kinds of false gods and idols to be built up in Jerusalem. The god of Moloch, sacrificing live children in the coals of the hands of Moloch. Oh, he started out smart and wise, but he didn't walk in that wisdom towards the end. So yes, anything that is Antichrist, anything that denies Christ is in the spirit of Antichrist. And I don't spend a lot of time trying to identify a certain individual or anything like that, but I sure can notice the times that we are living in. If you enjoyed this video and you still have more questions about the Bible, remember to subscribe to this channel and download the free Ascension app for more Bible answers.